Now, look, obviously, inflation is still too high. The president is doing everything that he can to lower costs for the American people, hence the Inflation Reduction Act. That's also going to lower costs on healthcare, lower cost on energy, and also reduce the deficit by $200 billion. So we are doing the work. The president is doing the work to get that done. But look, as I said, inflation is still is too high, and we're going to continue to focus on that. But we believe that the president's economic policy is working, and all you have to do is look at the data.
Meanwhile, a lot of people with inflation, everybody was talking about inflation, had a lot to do with the bottlenecks, had a lot to do with us not being able to get goods, things were slowing down. But at this point, the inflation numbers where they're at, it's gone past that. And I think that the hard part about it, when you look at it from just a simplistic point of view, is that Fed, their mandate is to get inflation down to 2%.
Absolutely.
Now, my opinion is that we're never going back to 2%.
Wow. All right, guys, we have a very, very, very special edition of the show today, as I have Mr. Colin Plume, the CEO of Noble Gold, on with me to discuss the general state of the economy, things like inflation, unemployment, to help give you guys a better understanding of kind of what's going on in relation to his company, Noble Gold, and some of the products that they offer in regards to investing in precious metals. Okay, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are interested in maybe having some type of hedge against inflation, especially considering how it doesn't seem like inflation is falling at the rate that we anticipated it will fall at, considering that the Federal Reserve is actively increasing interest rates. So I thought that at this point, maybe having Mr. Plume on to kind of help navigate what we're saying would be helpful for you guys. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and let him introduce himself, and then we'll just go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, thanks, Greg, for having me on. And I've been in the investment space in precious metals for almost 15 years. Before that, I was in commercial real estate and commercial insurance. So I have a lot of experience in just protecting wealth in general and in physical investments. That's really my bread and butter. I typically focus on tangible investments like gold and silver. And I think more than ever, people are really looking at alternatives to protect themselves because, as you mentioned, inflation has been higher than we've seen in a long time. I mean, inflation last year was above 8%. Most people don't remember inflation being anywhere near that number. I think it's been at 2%, or at least reported at 2%. I've always said that inflation is much higher than the 2% reported number. But yeah, inflation last year was at 8%. The Fed's been pushing and driving interest rates up. And home mortgages last month were above 7%. And to give some perspective, I mean, you could get a home mortgage a year and a half ago in the 3% or 3.25% range. So the cost of borrowing, the cost of debt has really skyrocketed. And so people are looking at where they can put their money, how they can protect themselves. Last year, most of the major investments, S&P, the Dow, most of those indexes were down anywhere from 10 to 25%. And gold and silver performed really well. Last year, gold was the shining asset class for most investors. It wasn't up a lot, but it wasn't down as a lot of these other assets were. So I think today is a good time for us to talk about some of the alternatives that are out there and sort of open people's eyes up to there is things besides the stock market. You can invest in your IRA. You can buy physical gold and silver and platinum and palladium. And so these are things that a lot of investors are doing. And there's a lot of wealthy people, a lot of billionaires that are continuing to buy physical gold and silver because they just don't trust some of the other assets that are out there.
Got it. I understand. So I want you to help our audience kind of understand, what is the relationship between inflation and gold? Like, why should investors maybe look at precious metals such as gold during a time like this where inflation is higher than it's been historically?
Well, we're just printing too much money, right? I mean, ultimately, what we've done is we've expanded the money supply so much, especially over the last 20 years, even just the beginning of COVID. I mean, all of everything that we've been doing out there, all the stimulus that we've done, all just the money printing that we've done, eventually is going to lead to heavy inflation. So the idea of getting out of paper, out of fiat money, that can just be printed and printed and printed. And we've done it to such a huge extent. And it's quite interesting. If you look at the numbers of debt and money, and you look at, let's just take one thing, for example, that I was reviewing, credit card debt. Credit card debt was the lowest it's ever been during COVID. People were home, they were saving money. A lot of people weren't working, but yet credit card debt was falling tremendously. Now, the government reports that unemployment is still at a very low level. That's what they're telling us. They're telling us we're not in a recession, right? Yet credit card debt right now, the average American, you're looking at about 36 or 37% of Americans have more credit card debt than savings. So all the stimulus and everything that was done over the last few years to hopefully pull us out of this has actually put us in a worse position. It's actually created more debt. So the idea is with gold, for instance, let's just take gold, is that you're getting into an asset that has a limited supply. That's the ultimate truth in anything. And it's so few investments out there that actually have a limited supply. The amount of gold in the world, in the whole world, that's above ground is it would only fit in 2.5 Olympic size swimming pools. That's all the gold in the world. So it has a limited supply. And if you look at who's buying gold, you have central banks buying gold all over the world. Last year, more central bank buying of gold was in 50 years before that. They bought 1,136 tons of gold last year from central banks. And that's just one buyer, obviously a lot of countries buying gold. You still have jewelry demand for gold. You still have all the industrial uses, they use gold in heart monitors, they use gold in cell phones. So you have all these other uses. So the thing that makes gold so unique and so different than so many other investments out there is that it has the investment. So you have central banks buying it and holding it. You have the industrial uses, and then it's really money, right? At the end of the day, gold is actually real money, yet it doesn't deflate like paper money, like the money that you and I use, like dollars that we use. So it's quite a unique investment. So the idea is when you have heavy inflation and your dollar is losing, let's just say 8%. So, you lost 8% last year. So $100, is worth 8% less, right? It's lost a lot of value. Getting into something that has a limited supply to hedge that bet against money is a good way to protect yourself sort of going forward, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, especially in a time like this where real wages are negative. Okay. I mean, the Biden administration is bragging about, okay, wage growth is going up, but it's not outpacing inflation, which means, again, real wages are going down, and they really don't want to have that conversation. Now, when I was in the investment industry, the way we would construct a client's portfolio, we would mainly be mostly diversified in the stock market, maybe the total stock market or the S&P 500. Now, the way we saw gold, we saw gold more of as a kind of something to be a little bit less volatile. Okay. Something that, we know is going to hold value, but over time is going to generally go up. Now, I guess my question is, when you have people who are closer to retirement, and they're worried about some of the volatility that we may be seeing in the market, because I'm sure you've noticed over the past few weeks we had a bull run, because they thought that maybe inflation was going to continue to go down. But now with recent numbers that have come out, the Feds at the last meeting, they raised it 25 basis points. And now they're saying, okay, well, with the new inflation numbers, they may have to go back to 50 basis points, maybe 75 basis points or whatever. A lot of people, at least me, I'm fearing that there may be some more volatility because of that, right? That investors may say, you know what, we may have to keep raising interest rates. So I just want your perspective on again, what can the role of gold be in regards to helping protect somebody's portfolio from all that volatility that may come in the market, especially for investors who are approaching, retirement age, that may be looking to kind of, protect their assets a little bit more from the fluctuations?
Yeah, I mean, I think the closer you get to retirement, the less volatility you want. And that's why a lot of people last year moved out of the stock market. They couldn't deal with that cycle that we're going through. And I think you're right. We did have sort of a mini bull run, but I think a lot of it was based on the fact that they sort of priced in the idea that inflation was coming down, and it went in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people with inflation, everybody was talking about inflation had a lot to do with the bottlenecks, had a lot to do with us not being able to get goods, things were slowing down. But at this point, the inflation numbers where they're at, it's gone past that. And I think that the hard part about it, when you look at it from just a simplistic point of view, is that Fed, their mandate is to get inflation down to 2%.
Absolutely.
Now, my opinion is that we're never going back to 2%.
Wow.
So they're always going to be in a position where they're going to have to try to raise interest rates and manipulate it. And obviously, one of the things that they've done is they've changed the CPI over time.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the CPI, the way it was calculated when, let's say, Ronald Reagan was in office, and you take it today, they've pulled out a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different ways to look at the inflation, the CPI numbers from the 1980s to today. There's a great website and an economist, this guy, John Williams from shadowstats.com. And you can go to his website, and he's been studying government statistics for the last 45 years. If you look at his inflation numbers, even before the reported numbers of 8% last year, he always reported inflation in this country for the last 20 years from 7 to 10%, because he calculated the way that they used to in the early 80s. So I think inflation's never going to go back to 2%. I think we're going to be stuck in this. Could it go back to 4, maybe? Potentially, yeah, 3.5. But I think that because of that, we're going to have a rocky road. And I think that the problem is the Fed is always going to be stuck, because ultimately their job, their mandate is to get back to that 2%. So I think it's going to be hard to build stability back in the markets until we change that. And in my opinion, the only way they change it is change CPI numbers, or they raise the inflation numbers from 2% to maybe 3 or 4%.
Mm-hmm.
This 2% mandate that we've had, no other country in the world has been living in a 2% inflation. I mean, there's countries, I'm not going to go in Zimbabwe and all those that have 200% inflation,
Venezuela.
Right? Yeah, Venezuela. I'm not going to compare us to those countries. But also 2% is, in my opinion, is an unrealistic barometer in this day and age. And so I think until we make some fundamental changes, and I think we will, because what are the Feds going to do? No Fed is going to want to be in that job and continuously fail over the next 5 to 10 years. So they're going to make some changes there, but I don't think it's going back to that. So what do you do? So the question is what do you do? And I'm just saying what I've been preaching and talking about for a long time since I've been in precious metals is that people just don't talk about precious metals because they think it's a fringe investment, or they think it's something that is only for a certain group of people. But really, if you look at it, when you look at central banks last year buying 1,136 tons of gold, why would central banks buy gold when they can buy any asset that's out there? Why would they buy gold? They obviously believe it's a good asset. They obviously know what's happening in the economy. They also know that they can lend against the gold that they have, which is very common. A lot of countries, when they're doing large transactions for oil and other things, they'll barter against their gold. So it's a great instrument because it's an instrument that everybody wants on the other side, right? There's no counterparty risk. It's not like an Enron situation. It's not like all these stocks where there's always the risk of the other party. There is no counterparty risk. So it is the ultimate hedge in terms of a metal. And that's why it's been around for 5,000 years. That's why it's in the Bible. That's why people have been trading with this for a long time, because it's a fungible item. It's an item that both sides can count on in a transaction. And I think today people don't want to trade in U.S. Treasury bonds. They want to get away and get into something else. And so that's why gold has been such a valuable asset.
Awesome. So I want to talk more about silver as well too, and some of the green revolution and how silver may play into that. Okay, I know that's a part of you guys' offer with precious metals as well too. But first, I want to continue with this conversation with gold, because I think what you're saying is interesting. You're saying that we may not ever get back to a 2% inflationary environment again. I don't know where they get that number from, but that seems to be like the magic number they want to get to. And I think that the Fed is trying to engineer a soft landing in the sense that they're not trying to have too much unemployment, and they're, by raising interest rates too much and hurting the economy. But at the same time, they're trying to get inflation down to that number. And I think it'll be interesting to see if they can actually do that. And just listening to you, it's funny because a lot of people are expecting a Fed pivot, right? In the sense that they may just stop raising interest rates. Maybe they might start lowering interest rates if they damage the economy too bad. I just want to talk. Do you see a scenario where the Fed may pivot on their monetary policy altogether?
I think this year it's going to pivot at the end of the year, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I think they're going to have to. Also, there's some pretty big elections in the near future here. So
Yeah.
I think the timing kind of, it's
Yeah.
smart to kind of make a shift. Depending on who they want to get elected, you want to shift things. So I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of this year, somehow the inflation numbers start to slow down a little bit, and then they start to move in a different direction. That's my opinion, what I think is going to happen. But yeah, I mean, I think they're sort of in a tough position with what they need to do, and obviously we've built a lot of this wealth. And I would say argue since 9/11 and on, a lot of the wealth that we've seen is just paper wealth. I mean,
Yeah.
I think people, having so much value in their home, people feel really confident. And I don't think having a lot of value in your home is really the way you're going to get through a great retirement. I mean, at the end of the day, you do need a place to live. It's good to have that there, but my argument is that, when people tell me they have a lot of equity in their home and it's worthless, it's like, well, where are you going to live? The only way it benefits you is, eventually the mortgage will be paid off. But the only way you attach yourself to that money is if you sell it and then you move to Guam or something,
Yeah.
right? So you sell it in the US and then you move someplace that's much more cost effective. If you're not going to do that, which most people don't, once they live someplace, they're living there for a long time. So that money doesn't really help you. It just, eventually you don't have a mortgage, and that's great, but there's going to be other things that are going to be much more expensive. And to go with what you're talking about, the green revolution, I mean, there's a lot of things happening. This energy crunch that we're seeing is happening globally, and it's happening in so many different sectors. I was reading this morning in LA Times, they were talking about gas prices. Gas prices in Southern California since 2022 have gone up 312%. Gas prices. So there is this impetus for people to start looking at alternatives and trying to find different ways to get energy costs down, because at the end of the day, like, great, maybe you have your house paid off near retirement or at the end of retirement, but you want to keep the lights on, you need heat, you need all those things to live on. And if energy costs continue to skyrocket, it's going to make it, very difficult. And as you mentioned, wages obviously aren't going to go up to cover those costs. So there is this green revolution. That's why solar, electric vehicles, all these things are becoming so important. And silver is a big component of that. Silver is really a big driver in solar panels. It takes at least 20 grams of silver in every solar panel. And most places in the US that have enough sun are going to be moving in that direction. They're going to be moving in the direction of having solar panels. I think, people felt it at the pump with gas prices. So that's why electric vehicles became really important. So I don't think these things are going anywhere. And I think there's going to be a big push. And I think silver is a big component. The amount of industrial uses for silver has skyrocketed in the last 10 years, which makes it's just a great conductive metal. So that's why it's a perfect industrial metal for so many industries. And the fact that you can buy it right now in the $20 range, low 20s. And I think if you look at the demand and look at how much silver there is in the world, it's pretty amazing that you can still pick up silver in that $20 range.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've been loading up on silver personally, and if it continues to go lower, I'm really gonna throw the house at it, literally.
Yeah.
Because I mean that at least from what you're saying and the things I've been reading, there's a lot of upward price pressure on silver, and I'm actually surprised that it's as low as it is right now,
Me too.
considering the use cases. So again, thank you for going over that because that is something I want to get into because my audience, I mean we have our opinions about climate change, right? And whether or not, the research or what they're saying is actually accurate, but there's no denying that there's going to be a green revolution. We're moving towards, renewables, and the main component of those things, some of the precious metals that go into those things, it presents an investment opportunity, whether you agree with what's happening or not. So I think it's important for people to kind of to understand that and say, well, how can you take advantage of it? Well, silver, right? And I think that's something that people definitely should look into. It's definitely something that I have personally been kind of investing more and more into. One other thing I want to ask you, because I think people always have this natural question when it comes to gold and what they call the digital gold, Bitcoin, right? And what's happening there, because they're saying that, well, Bitcoin can be your hedge against inflation. But what we've seen is with rising inflation, we've seen Bitcoin kind of tank. It seems to be more responsive to the Federal Reserve and interest rates more so than actual inflation in and of itself.
Right.
So I wonder what is your take on that? What is your opinion on the digital gold Bitcoin, alleged digital gold Bitcoin versus actual physical gold?
Yeah, I mean, I think the similarities are just they're small in that the reason people say Bitcoin is like digital gold is because it is mined, because that's how the transactions happen. And they're mining more Bitcoin, and eventually they'll only be, unless they change something somehow, there'll only be 21 million Bitcoin. So there's a limited supply. So I think that's the really only connection, is the limited supply. And I think when people are looking at cryptocurrencies, they're trying to find a reason to buy them, and having a limited supply and having pretty widespread usage all over the world. And there's different countries, Venezuela, and these different countries that are adopting Bitcoin. So it's becoming more of a currency. However, the volatility of it and the 65% drop last year in price
Yeah.
makes it at this point not eligible to be any type of currency. You can't have a currency that has that tremendous amount of volatility, that downward pressure, because no society can sort of survive on that. Anything that goes down 5, 10, 15% in a day, how do you go to the store and buy food, or they have to change the price. It just doesn't work yet. Now, could it work in the future? Maybe there's a way that they could price check it so that it doesn't have this incredible volatility. But it doesn't work yet for those types of things. Cryptocurrency is fascinating. I'm invested in a lot of different things. I own some cryptocurrency, so I think there's a potential there, but there's a long way to go. And for the average investor that doesn't like volatility, that doesn't want the heart palpitations that you have to have when you're investing in crypto, I don't think it's for the average everyday investor. I think there's just too much volatility right now.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I think Bitcoin crypto right now really is kind of more speculation, more so than actually, real traditional investing. Probably should be a very small part of most people's portfolios, especially if they don't want too much volatility. So with that being said, I hope that people have a general understanding of the state of the economy in relation to the Federal Reserve, interest rates, kind of where we're going, what we're seeing with inflation, and gold and silver or precious metals, that the role that they could have in helping you navigate the current economic turmoil. I mean, they say we're not in a recession, but a lot of people feel like we're in a recession, right? And they're looking for some alternatives to kind of help them get through this, and help protect their assets and their money, and things of that nature. So with that being said, I want to give Mr. Plume an opportunity to talk more about Noble Gold and some of the things that you guys offer there. I mean, you guys seem to have retirement solutions for people who may want to actually transfer over their retirement or roll over, their IRA or their 401k into, your platform. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk more about kind of what your platform offers in general.
Yeah, well, first, we're a family-owned business, so I'm an entrepreneur, and I really focus, and I've been involved with people's money and investments for quite a long time. And the thing I always say is, you want to check out, and I know you did before you started working with us. You want to check out the reputation of any company, and we really hold our clients. We call them part of our Noble Gold family. That is the most important thing, is a relationship with our clients. And before anybody decides to do anything with us, we want to build a relationship. And when they're dealing business with us, it's not an online purchase. They're going to talk to a live person. They're going to get a representative. They're going to have people helping them with the paperwork. So we really believe in sort of that old school relationship of having a relationship, someone you can call. And whether you're doing an IRA with us or getting gold and silver shipped to your doorstep or however you're doing it, you're always going to be able to call us and ask questions. And that's really something that we pride ourselves on, is that, elite level concierge service. So yeah, you could do an IRA, old 401k. We can help you if you want to get out of some of the investments you're in and get into physical gold. And it's not a stock, it's not a fund, it's real gold, silver, platinum, palladium, any of those four metals. You decide how much of each you would like, but you're getting into something that you own. We just help you get there, but it's not a fund, it's not leverage. So I just want to be clear about that. Some people think we're a stock or a mining company. You're actually buying the real thing. And there's so few investments out there that you can actually buy the physical asset, but this investment, you're buying it, you own it. So yeah, if anyone wants to learn about what we do, get some free information or ask questions, ask a million questions, they can check out our website at Noble Gold Investments, or they can give us a call at 877-646-5347, and make sure that you mention that you heard about us on the show, that you heard us, that you heard this interview, and we do have some promotions going on for people that are involved. And so make sure you mention when you call in that you heard about us here on the show.
Thank you so much, Mr. Plume. I really appreciate you so much for coming on the show and talking to us today about the economy. I feel like it was very informative. I learned some things that even I wasn't aware of. I mean, you seem to be a man that really understands the statistics, right? And I'm super impressed by that. And I hope that the audience, like I said, has really got something out of this in regards to learning more about the economy, state of the economy, interest rates, what the Fed is doing in relation to, gold and silver, precious metals, and how that can help you kind of navigate the current economic situation. So without further ado, I thank you so much for coming on the show. And again, you guys can check out Noble Gold at noblegoldinvestments.com. And I will talk to you guys next time.